the fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
It's Friday, you bastard.
Russia has never been deterred. They put a man into the White House. Let's just say that bluntly here. Okay? They now have a working partner in the President of the United States. He is covering for their activities. And that the national security establishment had to come out and do a cover your butt, press conference, just before this shows the ineffectiveness that they have. The president will not lead on this. Whatever his oath is sworn to, it is not sworn to the Constitution of the United States.
Levels are crazy. Oh, it's Friday, you bastards, and I have dirty hair, which means it's been like, woo, just crazy busy. So that was Malcolm Nance, right, who is obviously, many things. He's an MSNBC contributor, but, Malcolm spent 35 years in the field and in combat intelligence activity. He's covert, he's been clandestine, he's been anti-terrorism, counterterrorism, and, supplied support to our intelligence agencies for, 35 years, even though he looks really good. It's hard to believe he could do anything. He's been doing anything for 35 because he looks 35. Anyway, he's going to join us at the bottom of the hour. And here's why. Last night he tweeted, and I tweeted back to him, and I'll show you what I tweeted back to him. Malcolm has a prediction that he feels very strongly about regarding the next round of indictments. He thinks that the people who bridged the communications between WikiLeaks stolen data stolen by a foreign adversary, data stolen by Russia's intelligence agents, a troll farm disseminated it, etc., right? But there's been indictments, right? And the indictments actually include 12 Russian intelligence officers. All right, so keep that in mind. He thinks the next round of indictments in this mess that is, this presidency is going to be Julian Assange and WikiLeaks staff, and of course, the people who bridged between Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. It's going to be, he thinks, Roger Stone, Cambridge Analytica, which would be the Mercers. That would be like, whoa, and maybe even Bannon would be included. I don't know, because, we're dealing in tweets here. And the entire Trump data team, which would be, remember, Jared was in charge of the data team. And then Brad Parscale was, this guy that we've gone over this. He used to go to Barnes & Nobles in Texas and ask people, hey, you need a website? I can build you one for $1,500. I have never seen a website for $1,500, okay? Our website is, we spent so many tens of thousands of dollars on our websites. But, Cambridge Analytica and the Trump data team. I mean, so I was so curious about why he thinks that. And what about Junior? What about Junior? So I tweeted him back, and I just, I wrote to him, I said, Malcolm, I like to save things. And I just tweeted back this particular clip because I want you to listen to all the names that are mentioned in this clip. This is from 2016 or 17. This is CNN. This is Anderson Cooper breaking some news here.
According to new reporting in the Atlantic magazine, 3 full weeks before running mate Mike Pence denied the campaign was, quote, in cahoots with WikiLeaks,
Mike Pence.
Donald Trump Jr. was absolutely in touch with, you guessed it, WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks, you'll recall, was the organization the U.S. intelligence community believes was chosen by the Kremlin to spread hacked information damaging to Hillary Clinton and the Democrats. What is so fascinating is how the communications in the form of Twitter direct messages mesh with certain points on the campaign timeline that we already know quite well. For instance, October 2nd, Trump friend and former advisor Roger Stone tweets that damaging material is coming from WikiLeaks. The next day, October 3rd, Trump Jr. messages them, asks them what's coming. On the 5th, Stone says there is a payload coming from WikiLeaks. On the 7th, the U.S. intelligence community says it believes Russia was behind the DNC hacks, and WikiLeaks begins releasing the hacked DNC Podesta emails. A month later, the 12th of October, WikiLeaks messages Trump Jr. asking him to link to one of their items. 2 days later, he tweets it out. And on that same day, the 14th, Mike Pence denies any collusion with WikiLeaks. It is, to say, at the least, fascinating, and not just to us. Congressional investigators are also of interest.
So that was from 2017, talking about things that happened in October of 2016 that had to do with Mike Pence, right? Had to do with Junior, had to do with a whole lot of, people, Roger Stone. Now, today, Roger Stone's assistant, who is well known to Scott, Scotty, who works on my show, right? Scotty, who grew up in my house. Everybody knows, if you go to the RandiRhodes.com, you see a picture of Team Randy. And Scotty and Brett are in that photo, and so is Howard. But Scotty knows this guy who was constantly reaching out to radio stations to book Roger Stone so Roger Stone could disseminate, the denials and crazy crap and, conspiracy theories and all kind. I won't denigrate the shows that put Roger Stone on, but let's just say I thought that was just really bizarre that you would give that man airtime, because that man is a dirty trickster, and he was using people in the media to disseminate garbage and lies and obviously cover his tracks. And then he would just go from, friendly broadcasters who were just fascinated with his persona, who didn't know any better, to, Alex Jones. And he would sit on Alex Jones and say he was being poisoned by the Russians with polonium, and that somebody tried to kill him. Because he had a fender bender, right? So of course somebody had to be, trying to kill. The guy is just a wackadoo. But the guy who booked him, the guy who is his assistant, was subpoenaed to the grand jury. And today he decided he doesn't feel like testifying, right? He was subpoenaed. And now that kid is being held in contempt of court. Meanwhile, this madam, Kristen Davis, who has, I don't even know why she's testifying, but I will say that last week, Kristen Davis, who Roger Stone is the godfather to Kristen Davis's son. Okay, that's how close they are. Roger Stone has hired her before. I don't know for what, but he has. And now he sits on the TV and he pretends, she's just into cosmetology now, and she's a wonderful, brilliant person. He said yesterday that he would not testify against the president, period, end of story, which means if Roger Stone was subpoenaed to appear before the grand jury, he would defy that subpoena. Turns out his assistant today defied that subpoena, but Kristen Davis has appeared, and she is appearing before the grand jury right now. Now, last week, the team, Mueller's team, spoke to Kristen Davis, who obviously has information about Roger Stone. And I don't know if it's a sex list, or if, Roger Stone was using her when she was a madam. Because remember, she was the one that brought down Elliot Spitzer. She's the one who sent the $4,000 hooker to Elliot Spitzer. And I remember saying, how beautiful do you have to be to charge $4,000 an hour? I mean, do you have to come with your own sunset? Because I would like to make $4,000 an hour. I told you, if I looked like her, I would be on a pole right now. But anyway, I don't know if they want Kristen Davis a sex list, or if they just know that she spent certain critical, crucial time periods with Roger Stone when he was communicating with Guccifer 2.0, when he was communicating with WikiLeaks. We don't know. All I can tell you is one person has violated a subpoena and is now being held in contempt. The other person with close ties to Roger Stone is testifying right freaking now. And Roger Stone's never been called to testify. And here's why I find this fascinating. And I've told you this before. I'm going to tell it to you till everybody understands it and can repeat it in casual conversation with your right-wing lunatic uncle. Okay? When you are a target of an investigation, they don't subpoena you, because a subpoena compels you to appear and testify. And if you're a target, they don't want to put you in that position because you would self-incriminate. So they don't subpoena targets because they don't want to run afoul of the Fifth Amendment privilege not to incriminate yourself. The fact that Roger Stone, the fact that Junior, the fact that Pence, the fact that Trump, the fact that all these people have not been subpoenaed or have been, spoken to after they voluntarily went to the to the House Intelligence Committee headed by one Devin Nunes, who needs to be removed because he told everybody that his job, as he sees it, is to protect and defend the president of the United States, not the country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. No, he feels that his oath was to the president. Now, we've seen this before with Bush. Okay, Bush had like that little agent Starling who thought she was working in the Justice Department. She thought she took an oath to the president, and they had to correct her. Okay, so all this is really fascinating. So here's another report. Okay, about this same. Well, let me start a little earlier because I save everything. You know, there was reporting that goes back to December of. Let me get the date right. It was December 8th, 2017 that CNN reported out, okay? And it was also reported by thinkprogress.org. And it was, but the Think Progress piece quoted the reporting that went on at CNN. I believe this was Pam Brown. I don't know where Pamela Brown is. I haven't seen her lately, but Pam Brown is a serious Brenda Starr reporter. She's gorgeous, too. I mean, just as an aside, she's just stunning. But on, back in December, CNN reported that Donald Trump Jr. got an email in September of 2016 that offered him a decryption key because WikiLeaks was putting out documents, but they were encrypted. And they offered in this email a decryption key and the website URL for the hacked WikiLeaks documents. That was sent a month before WikiLeaks started releasing the hacked emails, okay? That was September of 2016. So there was a report that, Manu Raju filed on behalf of, Manu Raju is the Capitol Hill reporter for CNN, right? And what did I do with my sheet? Oh, I got it. Okay. It is cut 25. I have so many things today to show you. Listen.
Well, John, Donald Trump, his son, Donald Trump Jr., and others in the Trump organization, they received an email in September 2016 offering a decryption key and website address for hacked WikiLeaks documents. Now, this is according to a September 4th, 2016 email provided to congressional investigators by the Trump organization. Now, to put the time frame in context here, this email came months after the hacked emails of the DNC were made public, and 1 month before WikiLeaks began leaking the contents of Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta's hacked emails, and shortly before Trump Jr. began an exchange of direct messages on Twitter with WikiLeaks. Now, congressional investigators are trying to determine whether the individual who sent the September email is legitimate and whether it shows additional efforts by WikiLeaks to connect with Trump's son and others on the Trump campaign. Now, the email also indicated that the Trump campaign could access records from the former Secretary of State Colin Powell, whose hacked emails were made public by a Russian front group 10 days later. The email came from someone who listed his name as Mike Erickson, and it was addressed to Trump, Trump Jr.'s personal assistant, and others. Now, the investigators are uncertain who the sender is, and CNN was unable to make contact with the individual. It's not even clear whether the email was a legitimate effort to provide these hacked documents to the Trump campaign. Now, Trump Jr., who came to Capitol Hill this week, was asked about this before the House Intelligence Committee behind closed doors, according to sources who told my colleague Jeremy Herb and I. Trump Jr.'s attorney told CNN that his client said he had no recollection of the email and took no action on it. Now, the use of a website and decryption key is a means to provide information. This aligns with past WikiLeaks practices. The idea is that WikiLeaks will post a data file on the internet, but is encrypted and impossible to open without the key. The question here, though, is that did that actually happen here? We don't know the answer to that quite yet.
Oh, I think we do. See, this is elderly reporting. Do you know what I mean? This is CNN breaking stories last year about what happened the summer of 2016 into the fall. Now, what we know now is that on June 3rd of 2016, Emin Aglarlev and his father reached out to Junior and told Junior that they had dirt on Hillary Clinton, okay, and that the Russian government was supporting Donald Trump, and that they wanted, to have a meeting in Trump Tower with Junior to give them the dirt on Hillary Clinton. Now, a lot of lying went on about that meeting until that meeting was confirmed, and so now we know it's true, and we know that Senior tried to write a cover letter for Junior. We know that whole part, right? We know that by backwards and forwards. So that happened on June 3rd. We know on June 6th, the meeting was inked in. We know on June 7th, Donald Trump stood in front of the American people and said that next week I'm going to have dirt on Hillary Clinton because the meeting was scheduled for the 9th. And we know that the meeting happened. We know the hacking began that same day. The hacking into Hillary Clinton's server happened right after that summer June meeting in Trump Tower. And now we know that in September, on September 4th, an encryption key with hacked documents was provided to Junior to open the files that the Russians hacked and transferred to WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks, or somebody representing that WikiLeaks had these hacked emails, provided Junior with the website where you could find these hacked, stolen emails and a decryption key in order to read them. We also know that Donald Trump Jr. tweets this out, that WikiLeaks, that they told him that they had these things. They told them that there was a decryption key enclosed in this email. And we know that whatever Donald Trump Jr. was told to do, he then did.
Good evening. I'm Aaron Burnett. Out front this evening, the breaking news, a bombshell report showing private messages exchanged between Donald Trump Jr. and WikiLeaks during the 2016 presidential campaign. The Atlantic magazine reporting that Trump Jr. was actively solicited by the organization. A long trail of messages from September 2016 until July of this year. The revelation showing numerous exchanges on Twitter, with WikiLeaks offering up damaging information on Hillary Clinton and her campaign. Here's a WikiLeaks message, just one of them, to Trump Jr. on October 3rd, 2016. Hi, yes, writes WikiLeaks. It'd be great if you guys could comment on / push this story. Now, this story happened to be a quote from Clinton about wanting to, quote, just drone WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Trump Jr. responded, quote, already did that earlier today. And candidate Trump, on the trail in the days just after that, urged listeners to check out WikiLeaks.
WikiLeaks is amazing, the stuff that's coming out.
This WikiLeaks stuff is unbelievable. It tells you the inner heart. You got to read it.
WikiLeaks, I love WikiLeaks.
Then, in a follow-up message on October 12th, WikiLeaks again messaging Donald Trump Jr., writing in part, quote, strongly suggest your dad tweets this link if he mentions us. There's many great stories the press are missing, and we're sure some of your followers will find it. Now, just 15 minutes later, Donald Trump himself fired off this tweet echoing WikiLeaks language. Quote, very little pickup by the dishonest media of incredible information provided by WikiLeaks. So dishonest. Rigged system. By the way, that link that WikiLeaks had wanted to be tweeted out, Donald Trump Jr. did tweet it out. And Julian Assange tonight is tweeting a response to the Atlantic report saying, quote, I cannot confirm the alleged direct messages from @DonaldJ.Trump Jr. to WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks does not keep such records, and the Atlantic's presentation is edited and clearly does not have the full context. Let's be clear, though, about why these messages between Trump Jr. and WikiLeaks are so relevant in the Russia investigation. Because of this. Here's the CIA director, Trump's own CIA director, the guy he picked, okay, Mike Pompeo. Here's what he says about WikiLeaks.
It's time to call out WikiLeaks for what it really is. A non-state hostile intelligence service often abetted by state actors like Russia.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, my God. See, that's why you save things.
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing.
And all you have to do is take a look at WikiLeaks.
This just came out. This just came out. WikiLeaks, I love WikiLeaks. Amazing how nothing's secret today when you talk about the internet.
WikiLeaks, WikiLeaks. They've got to start talking about WikiLeaks.
The wonder of WikiLeaks.
Oh, we love WikiLeaks. Boy, they have really WikiLeaks.
They have revealed a lot. WikiLeaks. That came out on WikiLeaks.
164 times he mentioned WikiLeaks. 164 times. Donald Trump Jr. turned over direct messages to Congress, and he minimized it by saying, ooh, I only talked to them by direct message, 3 whopping times, right? But everything he's being told to do, junior, senior, by the Russians who transferred these documents to WikiLeaks, they supplied the encryption key for the documents to Junior on September 4th. He meets with the Russians in June 7th. Senior says, I'm going to have dirt. Oh, I never told my father. It was such a nothing meeting. I never told him. I mean, it's all a lie. The lying is endless. And I swear to God, the fact that these people, Junior, Stone, Trump himself, nobody's been subpoenaed yet, tells me they're targets. We'll talk to Malcolm and see what he thinks.
RandiRhodes.com. Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
But Trump has a pattern of speaking that we all know, and it's lie, deny, and then arrogantly confess. We've seen that before, I mean, when he had his interview with Lester Holt, when he admitted that he wanted to fire Comey, and it was about the Russian thing.
Yeah. Malcolm Nance joins us now, author of The Plot to Destroy Democracy and, of course, a 35-year field combat intelligence, counterintelligence, anti-terrorism support guy who we all know as an MSNBC contributor as well. Malcolm, your book must be selling really well because my listeners are buying it and sending it to me. Oh, can you hear me?
Hey, Randy, how are you?
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's selling pretty well. We're still on the New York Times bestsellers list.
I
trying to
saw
jump
that.
up so I can knock that Greg Jarrett guy off with his crazy Russian hoax book.
Yeah, that Fox News is really quite something, isn't it? I just, I don't even understand, why people don't understand that faux news is one vowel movement away from what it actually does to the news. And, but it's 100% white audience. I mean, they play this racial grievance loop over and over again. We'll get to that in our second hour. But I wanted to talk to you for the last few days, especially last night after you tweeted. I tweeted back at you. You actually tweeted that you think the next round of indictments are going to include Roger Stone, Cambridge Analytica, and the Trump data team. And I tweeted back to you that I save everything and showed a clip to you, and I just played it for our audience in the setup, knowing you were coming on today, about how stories that broke back in 2017 around Donald Trump Jr. receiving emails, like in September of 2016, post the Russia Tower meeting, the Trump Tower meeting,
right,
saying that he got emails from some guy named Erickson saying, here's the encryption key and here's the WikiLeaks website with the encrypted data with the dirt on Hillary Clinton. Right. And then another story broke, and it said that, here are Trump's, direct messages with Twitter. Here's Roger Stone's direct messages with Twitter. This is the day that Mike Pence lied and said, we aren't in touch with WikiLeaks. I mean, all this was happening September, October of last year. So I was wondering, do you think I understand the Roger Stone point. I get that. I mean, unless the pot he smokes makes him really clairvoyant, and he knew, that Podesta's time in the barrel was coming because, the THC actually releases something in the brain that lets you see into the future. He was talking to WikiLeaks. Today, he's got this assistant that's well known to talk radio because this guy booked Roger Stone everywhere, refusing a subpoena, violating the court order to appear. Yet he's talking to Kristen Davis. The grand jury's hearing from Kristen Davis. Roger Stone is godfather to her son. So why hasn't Roger Stone been subpoenaed?
Well, I think for the most part because they're waiting to make him a target. He's probably got a big target on his back. And, the reason that I made that prediction, one, because, I've already written 2 books about this thing over 2 years.
Yeah.
This is an easy one. We saw that when Roger Stone was foreshadowing all these data releases, there had to be what we call a bridge between him and WikiLeaks. And he didn't have to be that person directly. He could have had a facilitator, could have been, Randi Credico, or it could have been this Andrew Miller, or it could have been some other type of covert communications that he was having, like a secure, email channel. But the evidence out there shows that he was involved in some way. And though Roger Stone tends to lie to us in public, let me tell you, the special counsel doesn't want to see him until they're ready to squeeze him like an orange. So, which is why they're going around all of his associates. And, it was an easy call to say that he's next, Julian Assange is next, because these people are the next tier. We're going to find out that they are the people who were the facilitators. They're not one line of communications to the Trump team, but multiple lines of communications to the Trump team. I think there were several dirty tricks teams.
Yeah, I feel bad for Randi Credico. I've known him for 20 years, okay? Randi Credico was a writer for various personalities back in the Air America days.
Right.
It's very interesting. I've talked to Randi since, and Randy's a little out there. Okay, he's just out there, and I know that he went to London because a friend of ours who's since passed away, Barry Crimmins, who was a great stand-up comedian, was appearing in London, and Randi went over there to support Barry, and then he decided, won't it be fun if I go by the Ecuadorian embassy and try and get in to see Julian Assange? And, he has, talked to Roger Stone, just like I said, all these talk radio hosts, not me. I would never put Roger Stone on our air. But a lot of our friends in, progressive talk radio, they love talking to Roger Stone and letting him use them to disseminate this garbage because they're not as experienced. They don't understand the weight and the importance of this small little space that, progressives take up. And they wasted it on a guy like Roger Stone. They were used by him, and then he would go on Alex Jones' show and sit there and say he was poisoned by polonium. I mean, just a sick thing.
Right.
Right.
Well, Roger Stone will figure highly in this, and I think everyone who's ever invited him on their show will have the opportunity to replay all of their tracks, and you will get the last laugh. I met him last year at Politicon, a very interesting character. But you know what? There's only one of two things that's happening here. Roger Stone is going to prove himself to be the pathological liar that some people believe, or Roger Stone jumped feet first into this and decided he was going to be a kingmaker and play chief of dirty tricks. And, although he's come out and he's admitted that he didn't have some contact, that doesn't mean that he didn't have communication or at least facilitation of data over to the Trump team. He might have seen it as, just interesting in itself. But, things like this in the legal setting generally tend to bite you in the butt.
So I agree with everything you just said. I also have told my audience that it is my belief that if you aren't subpoenaed and your name is Trump Jr. or your name is Roger Stone or your name is Steve Bannon or your name is Mercer, okay, Rebecca or otherwise, it's because you're a target. And you can't, right. And the prosecutors are very they're very aware of the law. And the law says you can't compel somebody to self-incriminate. And a subpoena for those people would be an invitation to self-incriminate. And they're not that stupid. And that's why I believe there's been no subpoena for Stone or Junior or a whole host of people.
No, they're going to be called in.
You think so?
Last. And then when they're called in before the grand jury, they may as well just bring their own ropes. Because, they expect these people to feel that they're faster, better, more intelligent than the special counsel and his, almost 20 career prosecutors who have already ripped up their world. I mean, people have to understand that he's flipped, Mueller has flipped some of the biggest names out there. And if guys like Stone think that they're going to be able to,
I'm losing you.
Did you lose me?
No, I got you. Just don't move. Don't move.
I ain't moving.
Ain't technology the best? Don't you just love all the advances we've made here in the 21st century? Nothing works.
Yeah.
It's so amazing. So let me ask you this, just in case I do lose you, because Roger Stone, to me, seems like a guy, because this is what he said anyway publicly yesterday, that he will never testify against the president. Do you? And obviously today, you know, his little assistant there is taking the bullet. He's going to be. I mean, he's being held in contempt of court. There was a 92-page ruling that a U.S. District Chief Judge wrote saying this kid's got a 93-page opinion saying that Mr. Miller must testify, and he's not testifying. So don't you think Roger Stone will be held in contempt too? I mean, don't you think that Roger Stone would defy a subpoena should one come?
It could get there, but you know, another problem for Roger Stone is that many of these activities that took place, they took place in New York City. And that means that New York State could have a bite at this apple in future if Roger Stone thinks that there's that his loyalty will earn him an impeachment. One thing that I did find fascinating that I think both Miller and Stone will find fascinating is that, you know, prison jumpsuits don't only come in orange; they come in green. And Paul Manafort is learning that lesson right now, that he could live in that till the day he died. And I think that they need to get this through their head. If they think Donald Trump is coming for them, my good friend Tim O'Brien, the author of Trump Nation, and he wrote, Trump will stick his neck out for no one. No one. Not
Right.
Ivanka.
Not his son. Yeah.
No. If it comes time, you know, it's like that joke that's going around on the internet where they say, oh, yeah, Don Jr., yeah, you know, he works for us one time, but he was a low-level staffer. And that's what's going to happen to everyone else.
Well, I mean, if Roger Stone is subpoenaed, just like this little kid Miller, right, and they defy the court order, can't the president pardon them for the contempt charge? I mean, isn't the ultimate power with Donald Trump to pardon everybody? Don't you think Manafort's playing the game
Sure.
because he expects a pardon in the end?
Sure, he can pardon him for a contempt charge, but that doesn't mean that that you can never be tried again for anything. You also have to admit, you admit to the charge. But as soon as you're pardoned, they could hammer them for conspiracy. They could hammer them for entirely different charges. What we're seeing right now is they just want them in the box to bring them before the grand jury. So we don't know what Stone is going to be charged with. And the president can't pardon him, you know, preemptively of all of his sins. There has to be something that he allocutes to.
Right, but I don't think they feel fear. I don't think they're afraid. I think that they're willing to take the bullet. I think that they believe that they will be pardoned. And so this is why they're defying subpoenas at this point.
Well, great, you know, and they will get a taste of the federal law enforcement system. They'll get to see what color jumpsuit that they get into. And that generally tends to change your focus, right? When you suddenly feel abandoned, you have restrictions. You know, the one thing that we didn't see with Paul Manafort that occurred was that right after he was, had his bond removed, they shackled him. They removed his shoestrings. They took his belt. You know, he was hanging gangster style. And then he was shuffled into a jail. And, along with every other prisoner, that tends to focus you. Now, he kept thinking, hey, if I can hold out here, I'll be fine. This man stole $30 million from the people of the United States. And I don't think Trump's going to pardon him if he gets convicted. Same thing with all the rest of these guys. They think they're loyalists, and that's going to help work for them. I think they're going to get an education they didn't expect.
So let me go through another thing you tweeted last night about Cambridge Analytica. Who do you think is going to be one of the conspirators over there? Is it?
Nick. Andrew, I think it's Andrew Nix, the entire senior staff. And as you know, we already have a whistleblower at Cambridge.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Talking. So,
yeah.
It's not like we don't have witnesses. So I think it's going to be eminently unhealthy for them.
You think anybody will get close to a Mercer or to a Bannon at Cambridge? Or?
Well, I suspect that Steve Bannon, since last year we haven't heard anything, and he spoke to the special counsel. He's the Karl Rove of this story. And if you recall, with Karl Rove and
Scooter Libby,
yeah, you know, he was an unindicted co-conspirator.
Yeah,
but Rove spilled his guts at the last minute. I think Steve Bannon's that kind of guy. When he starts to see the ship sink, I think he wants to truly be the John the Baptist of the ultra-white white supremacist movement between the United States and Europe. So he sees himself as something higher than Trump. But I think he'll talk. I think if he could stick a dagger in Trump and take over the movement, he would.
And the Trump data team, or were you referring to anybody specific, like a Kushner who was in charge of the data team, or a Pascal?
Well, that's where Bannon and Kushner both come under it with their links, and having been on the staff of Cambridge, you know, the board of Cambridge Analytica.
Yeah.
The data team is suspect because that data did go to them. Much of the Cambridge Analytica data went to them. Also, you know, we have Konstantin Rykov. If you read my book, in the chapter I wrote on Trump called A Treasonous Aspect, there was a confession in plain sight by the Ted Turner of Russia, Konstantin Rykov, where he tweeted, and he didn't tweet, he put out a Facebook post in 2016 that he and Trump had communicated about Cambridge Analytica creating what he called emotional psychotypes or personality psychotypes of the typical Trump voter, and that they would use data to get them to vote against Hillary Clinton and for Trump. All of these things have to be investigated. We don't know whether they're just, you know, electioneering or espionage. But everyone on the board of Cambridge, Kushner's got his own problems, right? This is a guy who asked the Russians for secret communications channels in the Russian embassy. So he's got his own issues, much less emoluments clauses. But I could go on for the next year because this is going to be going on for years. But until we get to that point, the next tier of these operatives, they're taking down are everyone that is below the official Trump team. But all of those people will have had direct ties to the official Trump team. Trump Jr., Bannon, Kushner, everyone who showed up at that meeting. And it's going to be unhealthy for all of them.
You think there was a pre-meeting the way Michael Cohen asserts there was, or is he freaked out?
We do not. No, hold on. We don't know that.
Right.
The only person that asserted that was Rudy Giuliani. He could have made that fact up in trying to get Cohen to say, yeah, that happened. What's his name? Lanny Davis hasn't confirmed that. He may have accidentally identified something he knew.
Yeah.
So let's just let Giuliani's own words hang him.
Yeah, I mean, he's just so bold-faced. I mean, he is so he's so willing to lie. I was playing yesterday something he said on Fox News where he invokes rules and guidelines that don't exist except in Rudy Giuliani's head. And I mean, he was saying things like, "Oh, well, it has to be over by September 1st because there's a 60-day rule that you can't have an ongoing investigation." Of course not.
No such thing.
Of course, Iran-Contra went on for what, like 90 months or something. I mean, I knew Lawrence Walsh. I knew that prosecutor. He was unbelievable. But that whole thing went on for years. It's a 12-volume report, the Iran-Contra report. Oliver North did stand convicted of crimes against his country a certain amount of days in his life. And I interviewed him, and he refuses to accept that is true about him. Now he's the head of the NRA, which is very bizarre. That's been infiltrated by Russians, this Maria Butina. What I think is interesting about the last name of the emailer to Donald Trump that provided the key to the WikiLeaks encrypted site is Erickson, and he's the guy that was, shacking up with Maria Butina. Right. So, I mean,
that all remains to be seen. I mean, we don't have to, run around with the pieces of red string.
Yeah.
Because I've got a special counsel that's going to take this all apart. It's going to be glorious reading, and it's going to make way for the third book in my trilogy about this whole thing, which you will really like the title. Next year we'll get to it. But, as I explained in Plot to Destroy Democracy, Maria Butina takes up 12 pages in my book.
Yeah.
And you know what that section's called? The Honey Trap.
Yeah. It's just...
it's clearly to intelligence professionals like myself what these characters were. And that's how, I could write Plot to Hack America 6 weeks before the election, and it's all come out true.
Okay, so that was really clairvoyant of you. I mean, what was the seed? What made you do that? Because Plot to Hack America really did precede this entire evolution of this story. How did you know?
Well, the funny thing was I was writing another book before that called Hacking ISIS. And while I was writing that book, I had been analyzing, of course, all cyber warfare operations. And in the middle of it, we had done this research about the hacking of TV5 in Paris and the the Warsaw Stock Exchange in Poland. And the entities that did that were ATP 28 and ATP 29, Fancy Bear and Cozy Bear, right? Russian military intelligence. They had also hacked the White House, attempted hackings on, the Pentagon. And so the moment I heard in April from, there were rumors going around that maybe, Fancy Bear, Cozy Bear were involved in the DNC hacking, all of my alarms went off.
Okay.
I go like, whoa, you're talking Russian military intelligence, Russian clandestine service, state intelligence agency. If that was the case, and that's when I started putting it all together, it was very easy to see the pathway for, first, what their objectives had to be, which was to topple Hillary Clinton, to split the Democratic Party down the middle. Now, I was also the first person in all of the U.S. media to come on national TV on July 26th and say the United States was under attack in a broad-scale Russian cyber warfare operation. Because it was pretty clear, when Kuchever 2.0 came out and all of this was going together, it was clear the Russians were completely in the tank for Trump and that they were going to carry out this operation to split Democrats in half, which they did on the first day of the DNC. And that's when it all congealed, and I banged out Plot to Hack America in 5 weeks. And that's what we call a predictive intelligence analysis, where you know what must be in place in order to do these things. And that's what I did. I just put out precisely what should have been in place. And turns out the CIA was producing the exact same report and turned it in on the exact same day that I turned mine into my publisher, or that it went online to be published on September 23rd. President Obama received an identical report, and you know why? You know why, Randy?
Why?
We're not journalists. We're spies. For us, it's easy to put this, together. So it took, what's his name, the guy from The Guardian, 15 months to reproduce what I had written in a long format book, and then Russian roulette about almost 19 months after I had written Plot to Hack America.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, it was just so on the money. I mean, this is what I tell people, if they want to understand like who's truthful with them and who's, yanking their chain, is to look at previous statements and see if they came true. And if, and if news reports or spy novels, which are really not novels, they are, nonfiction, factual books connecting dots, pulling threads. It's like, I remember early on, I was talking to you about a couple other people whose names I won't even mention. I don't want to sully your reputation by putting you in the sentence with these two others. But I had asked you about these two others who were trying to cash in on it. And you said, this one's bat crap crazy, so ignore it. And, you know who I'm talking about. Yeah, and everybody that glommed onto that story, I didn't pay any attention to it either because I am a journalist and I'm a fact-based person. So I realized this is bat crap crazy stuff. And I just stuck with the four corners of your first book, and it all is accurate. It's all, and now we have the indictments of 12 GRU Russian intelligence operatives. I mean, unbelievable. You're right. It took 2 years, but we finally got those indictments, and that indictment, that was a speaking indictment, read just like your book.
And I mentioned in the book that the organizations that would have to happen would be what we called an information warfare management cell, led by the FSB and the GRU. And the GRU would do the hacking, and the FSB would do what we call the cracking, which is, and human intelligence. And it's all there. And it is all there. To be there. It has to be there.
It is all there.
But to destroy democracy, though,
I
spell out the strategic plan, how they are literally out to destroy democracy and turn America into an autocracy.
So the last question, we've seen the intelligence apparatus, let's say, stand up at a microphone in a White House briefing and say, the Russians are in. They're in the electric grid. We also know that they are in voter registration rolls. We know they're in Florida. We know that they're, doing stuff and things. And all the lights are blinking red. Our hair is on fire, which just reminds me of 9/11 again. What do they want with our electric grid?
Well, that's just a standard cyber warfare tool. What you do is you try to get into the grid, and then if you're having a crisis, where you want to produce an effect that is short of open warfare, you just knock down their power grid. And I wrote about this in Plot to Hack America, where I talk about how they took down the Ukrainian power grid using a malware suite called Black Energy 3. They literally seized control of these power plants. But to do it, you have to recreate a power plant in a computer room, right? With all of the circuit switches, and Russian power plant operators seized control of it remotely and shut them down so that they couldn't be turned back on.
So I remember that. I remember that part. It happened 2 times in Ukraine. I don't want to get conspiracy-ish, but election day.
Well, Randy, I know if bad things could happen, and you know what? There's only one way to resolve this. You have to bring 2 or 3 people who haven't voted, create a voting party is what I call them, and vote early if you have early voting in your state. That's a paper ballot.
Right.
Or absentee vote if you're out. Just do it, and we have to create more than a blue wave. We have to create a double blue tsunami, and that way anything they do on Election Day will be overwhelmed by numbers.
Yeah, I always say that. I say that elections can only be rigged when when it's tight.
Right.
If it's overwhelmingly one or the other, then no amount of engineering or rigging or whatever is going to make a difference. I lived through that in 2000 because I'm sitting in Palm Beach County. That's where I voted, and I voted for Pat Buchanan that year. So by accident, the butterfly ballot, and I remember all that. I remember even the government covering it. I remember reaching out to what's his name, Joe Lieberman, who was the vice presidential candidate on the ticket. And I had his number. I called him up and I said, Joe, something is so wrong. I think I just voted for Pat Buchanan. My mother just called me crying. She thinks she just voted for Pat Buchanan. And you know what he told me? It'll all be all right.
Yeah,
because he was part of it. There was no question that, it comes in lots of flavors. It comes on all, Well, listen,
all right, Randy.
I love you. The Plot to Destroy Democracy is the latest one. If you've read The Plot to Hack Democracy, you know he's on the money. The Plot to Destroy Democracy is about how Putin is trying to dismantle us through various NATO, our right to vote, all these things. And it's just amazing. It is on the bestseller list on the New York Times, and you deserve it. And thank you for taking time today. I know how busy you are. I love you, Malcolm.
All right, Randy. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Malcolm Nance. Now, I don't hog the Nance the way Miss Miller does. Just saying, Steph. Stop being such a hooah. She hogs this Nance to the point where I feel bad calling him, but I had to speak to him because there's too many things that are really coming to a boil now. There's too many people who are really, really... I believe they're targets of this investigation. I believe that they have been shown to have had not just fingers in the pie, but that they were direct messaging. They were receiving and sending emails and direct messages to Russian intelligence agents like Guccifer 2.0. Direct messages with people who were providing them encryption keys to documents. And now the timeline from June until October of 2016, all these spaces that we weren't clear on, all these particular events, now we can put names and times and places to all of them, and they all line up. It all makes sense.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
It's Friday, you bastards.
In some parts of the country, it does seem like the America that we know and love doesn't exist anymore. Massive demographic changes have been foisted upon the American people. And they're changes that none of us ever voted for and most of us don't like. From Virginia to California, we see stark examples of how radically, in some ways, the country has changed.
Oh, why did you mess with your lips? I told every woman out there, including Lala, who has always been exceptionally rude to me. I mean, she goes out of her way to be really nasty to me for some strange reason. I don't know. Maybe because I have full lips and I've never had to inject them with any damn thing. She definitely got a full implant, and it's so freaky to look at her. It's not shocking for me to hear her say white supremacist things, however. It is the niche that faux news actually exists in. And here's why, everybody. The Fox News audience is almost 100% white, according to Nielsen. Yeah. And so all they do is play to white anxiety and white grievance and white fear and whites losing their grip on power because their dicks don't work, apparently. I don't even understand how this happened. You got like 193 million white people in this country. Can't you make more babies? What is your problem? I'm too old, but go have at it this weekend. Do you know, you got Tucker Carlson on the air every night at 8 o'clock, and then Ingram, you take a breather with the Sean Hannity, who puts Rudy Giuliani on to make up rules and laws that don't exist and tells you collusion is not a crime because he can't find it in the federal statutes, and that's because he's not looking under RICO. He's not looking under conspiracy. He's not looking under the Espionage Act. He's not, you know what I mean? So you get this breather with Hannity, who spends his hour defending Donald Trump because, he's a slumlord and he's defending. I mean, honestly, Sean, why don't you just quit and go spend full time evicting people from your Georgia properties that you got at a sweetheart deal because of, HUD? Seriously, dude. Michael Cohen was your lawyer. We get it. You're a slumlord. Just go do that. Get off the freaking TV already. It's embarrassing. But that audience is 100% white. And so Laura Ingraham and Tucker Carlson, 8 o'clock, then you get the breather with Hannity where he just defends Donald Trump and puts idiot boy Rudy Giuliani. Oh, which reminds me, we were just talking about this outside during the break. I don't even want to tell you this because I don't even want you to find it or listen to it or anything. But, Jay Sekulow, who is the president's attorney, right? Right? He is the president's attorney last time I checked. I'm not wrong about that, am I? No. So Jay Sekulow has a radio show. A radio show. He's broadcasting nationally on a radio show, and he's the president's attorney at the same time. And basically what Jay Sekulow is doing is what Sean Hannity is doing, is what Rudy Giuliani is doing. They are tainting a jury pool and making a potential jury pool think that what the president did was not illegal, think that the president, didn't lie to the American people, or just distorting facts and just tainting a jury pool and giving a potential jury pool its opinion about this case, which is so, listen, you can't, I remember, we're not on the radio. We do the internet thing now because I don't want to work for anybody. I just don't. Working for people is always so disappointing to me. There's 5 people in radio. We all know each other as far as, who you could work for. And not the people who do it, but the people who work and hire you, and they're all disgusting to me. They're all liars. They're all cheats. They're all devious. They, some of them, they suspend you. They take your microphone away. They don't like what you say. They punish you. You're always the victim of a conservatives, messing up and mangling the advertiser, the whole thing, and then you get punished because you work for the same company, and the way that they sell it is across all the shows. So if Rush Limbaugh calls Sandra Fluke a prostitute, I get punished. You know what I mean? I'm just so sick of being attached to corporate media, and that's why we do it this way. And I love it. I love it. But I got to tell you, these guys are on the radio. Now, today, Sean Hannity, I don't know, he called in sick or he called in slumlordy. I don't know what his deal is. But he's got Jay Sekulow and Rudy Giuliani sitting in for him, tainting a jury pool. How a court can't send them a cease and desist. Because I will tell you, when I worked on terrestrial radio, if you were running for Congress, you couldn't have a radio show. Because they viewed that megaphone of radio as being campaigning and a thing of value. And so if you were running for Congress, you had to surrender your radio show. You couldn't do both at the same time because it's so valuable, these airwaves. Do you know? And now you've got the president's lawyers not only being booked on and appearing on television all the time to taint the jury pool and to put out false information about the law of this country and the rules at the Department of Justice, right? And that those people are sandwiched in between the air horn of racism to appeal to a 100% white jury who are the Fox News listeners. And by the way, there are very few of them. There's 3 million people that watch that channel on a great day. Go check the ratings. Go to Cable Newser and go check the ratings. I mean, the difference between the ratings for MSNBC and Fox is minuscule. Like some days, 9 o'clock on MSNBC wins. Some days, 9 o'clock on Fox wins. But it's always within, a couple of thousand people. It's not that slam dunk that anybody's got the grip, right? But I will say it's a very limited slice of the pie. It's about 3 million people that watch Fox News. There's 350 million of us. There's 186 million white people, and they're not all watching Fox. But I don't know how the court doesn't say. Now, remember, Michael Avenatti, who only represented Stormy Daniels, was scolded and warned by the court that he needed to pull back on his media appearances because he was it was possible that he was tainting a future jury that might hear Stormy Daniels' civil matter. You're talking federal criminal conspiracy, RICO, 150-year sentences kind of crimes over here, and the lawyers are on the TV and hosting radio shows to taint a jury. Sandwiched in between two white supremacists, Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham.
In some parts of the country, it does seem like the America that we know and love doesn't exist anymore. Massive demographic changes have been foisted upon the American people. And they're changes that none of us ever voted for, and most of us don't like. From Virginia to California, we see stark examples of how radically, in some ways, the country has changed.
There's so much to say about this crazy spew of hers, but it's the lips that just get me. Nice earrings, though. So I want to show you what she did last night. Besides play this, ever, never-ending racial grievance thing that she's got down to a science. Tucker Carlson, too. I mean, just let's remind everybody, that Tucker Carlson is also a disgusting human being.
So how is it white supremacy, that ban?
The Muslim ban.
It's basically the continuation of Trump's rhetoric, but it comes from the whole history of sort of white supremacist immigration law that we've had actually since the founding of this country. You had to be white in order to be naturalized from 1790 until 1952. And so that was the law for the vast majority of the history of this country. And what Trump is trying to do is go back to that with many laws, and especially with this Muslim ban. What year were you born? What does that matter?
Really?
It matters because I bet you probably weren't born too much before 1965. And since then, we've had about 90% of all immigrants into this country have been non-white. Now, that may be a lot of things. That's not white supremacy. So that's over 50 years of 90% of the immigrants are non-white. It's not white supremacy. Sure. It's like anything but that, right? It's definitely true. I'm not saying that what Trump is trying to stop that, right? What Trump is trying to do is to stop the brownification of America. That's what he ran on. He ran on sort of the anxiety of many white Americans that this country is becoming more diverse.
Right.
Okay, so before you make generalizations based on race, which is, is itself racist, let me just ask you, what percentage white, so it's a little less than 10% white now, okay? Our immigration breakdown. What percentage would Trump like to get it to achieve this white supremacy that you're barking about? Please be specific. That's not the point. You seem to know a lot. That's not the point. Oh, it is very much the point. No, it's very much the point. You just accused him of white supremacy. You just accused him of white. No, well, slow down. You accused him of white supremacy. So why don't you be specific and explain to me what that would look like? What percentage white is he trying to get our immigration numbers to? He told us what it would look like when he was in the Oval Office, and he called black countries S-hole countries, and why can't we get more people from Norway? He told us exactly what he was envisioning, right? When he wants to stop, when he wants to. No, you are a demagogue who is not actually. No, he didn't. He said specifically two specific countries, not all black countries. But I'm just asking. I didn't say all black countries. I didn't say all black countries. I said the countries that he called. Yeah, the countries that he called S-hole countries were black countries. Yes. And then he said, "Why can't we have more people from Norway?" We don't need him to be explicit, right? It's clear how he's talking. So how would he? It's clear when he tells us that Islam hates us, and when he tells us that he wants to ban all Muslims, just because he writes an executive order that seems facially neutral doesn't mean that he's not actually exercising that intent.
This is what goes on. And you know what's really interesting about this? The number one issue in this election for most Americans, a large majority, not even a plural, a large majority, it's like 75%. First of all, 75% of this country thinks immigration is a good thing. But the main issue on people's minds today is health care, not immigration. Not anything to do with these, 100% white grieving audience members that they play to every single day. People will vote on two things and two things only in this election, okay? They will vote to figure out a health care plan that works for all of them. Some of them will vote for Medicare for all. Others will vote for more moderate candidates who believe, at least we should have a public option. You could buy into Medicare earlier and try that. The other thing that they will vote for is checks and balances. Believing in democracy the way we do, they will vote to have a check on this president and see if anything this president says or does or, contributes to our well-being is true. Because I will tell you, the deficit is set to reach $1 trillion. The tax cuts went to the wealthy, and no one's feeling it.
The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
All right, I want to show you something, and I want you to really, really take this in, okay? This is what Laura Ingraham aired last night, okay? Her white supremacist remarks, which were literally ripped from the white supremacist playbook, about demographic changes that nobody voted for. Well, the hell we didn't. Everybody votes. Everybody that wants to vote hopefully can vote. Now that's becoming iffy. But You vote for your Congress member, and you know what their position is on immigration, and you know that we need immigration reform. And Democrats, had a gang of 8, and we had immigration reform all done in the Senate, and then turned it over to the House, and the House refused to even vote on it. So people are voting on immigration and immigration reform. They're also voting on health care, especially now. They're also voting on these ridiculous tax cuts that drove the debt up to $1 trillion and didn't benefit them. They're also voting on, their own kitchen table issues, whether or not they get a living wage, like a $15 an hour minimum wage. Okay, people know what's important to them. We don't need to be told by Fox News, but I just want to show you what they do. Now, the reason why I played that very long Tucker Carlson clip about the Muslim ban is to show you that all they ever deal in is race baiting. That's it. And they're really not interested in the counter argument that everything that Trump is doing with regard to brown people and saying that, it started with Kaiser Khan and his son, remember, and this guy's wife, she was somehow not allowed to speak because they're Muslims and Muslims hate us. And then the immigration forced zero tolerance separation policy, there's still 559 separated children. They are basically orphans at this point. The judge has mulled over the idea of holding Jeff Sessions in contempt of court for failing to have a plan before he ripped babies from haggard Honduran mothers' arms. Seriously, that's in the paper today. That a judge turned an airplane around because a woman and her family, they had a mother and a daughter, had come to the United States, made a claim of asylum. They passed the fear test, and they were waiting to have their court case heard. And Jeff Sessions ordered them deported in the middle of a proceeding. And the judge heard this because the ACLU finally have somebody, representing these people. You have races, RAICES. They got $21 million in donations to represent these poor mothers and fathers and their separated children. It's amazing. And the judge literally ordered the plane to turn around and bring this woman back to the United States because she had a legal right to claim asylum. And threatened to hold Jeff Sessions in contempt of court. That is what's going on with immigration. That is what's really happening. Most of the people who are here in our nation without documents, they're here on visa overstays. They are from Norway. I just hate to tell you, I had a friend who was an au pair. She wasn't from Norway. She was from Denmark. No, she was from Sweden. Mm-hmm. And she overstayed her visa, and yeah, she got deported, and she can't come back here. I had to go to Sweden like 2 years ago to see her. I hadn't seen her in 10 years because of that. So, just saying. But I want to show you what Laura Ingraham did. This is the clip she played ahead of this claim about demographic changes that nobody voted for. She played a clip of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is from the Bronx. She was a waitress, paying off her student loans. She had 2 jobs waitressing. She educated herself on her own dime. She got 2 degrees. And she decided that she was going to run for Congress and kick the crap out of a deeply entrenched establishment Democrat, Crowley, in the primary. And everybody's talking about her because she is remarkable. Laura Ingraham played an interview that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez gave and edited the crap out of it. I'm going to play you what appeared on Fox News in an attempt to make this double degree holding, hardworking waitress trying to pay off her student loans, who lives in the Bronx still and knocked on literally tens of thousands of doors in order to talk to people from the Bronx and a small sliver of Queens, which is the district. This is the video that they ran on Fox News, an edited video. Now, I just played you the whole Tucker Carlson. I didn't edit it. I don't edit it. Our clips are typically longer than most people's because I want you to hear the whole thing. I'm not afraid of you hearing the whole thing because they're morons on that channel. But this is what they aired regarding Alexandria.
A lot of these folks were in their political heyday in third way 90s politics. I think that politically, this like upper middle class is probably more moderate. But that upper middle class doesn't exist anymore in America. You know, their heyday was in the 90s when like, you know, kids had like Furbies and like parents, you had like soccer moms with like 2 vans and stuff like
Furbies and 2 vans.
Yeah.
That's a dream.
That's not America anymore.
That's not America anymore. She said like 7 times in that little 5 times in 2 sentences, I believe, something like that. I'm almost running out of fingers. As if she knows all of America from her loft in Queens. And by the way, what does she think? That moms outside of big cities can, what, cart their kids around on those dippy electric scooters or something? Oh, my goodness. Well, all kidding aside, what she seems to be saying, and it's kind of hard to dissect it, is that the new generation of women today are less moderate and, I suppose, closer to her socialist views. And I'm not sure what minivans have to do with it. And by the way, I happen to love my minivan. It rocks. But I've never met a single mother who owned 2 of them.
She is a piece of turd. I got to tell. Now I'm going to play you the unedited interview that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez gave.
The average age of a House Democrat right now is 65 years old. We're at the oldest point in American history. And not only are people just feverishly working on their own reelection for their second or sometimes third decade, but there's no investment in future leadership. Like we're putting all of this money into state parties, and those state parties aren't working on aggressively investing in young people running in state assembly seats, state house seats, so that they can later go on to Congress. That is not happening. It's certainly happening on the right, but it hasn't been happening on the left. And so for me, I think what's happening is that, you know, a lot of these folks were in their political heyday in third way 90s politics. And they were campaigning and they were really kind of connected most to an electorate when they were fighting for these seats, when they got these seats, when they were campaigning most, when we had more of an American middle class. And so I think that politically, this like upper middle class is probably more moderate, but that upper middle class doesn't exist anymore in America. And thanks to the continued deregulation of Wall Street, thanks to the continued gutting of working and middle class people, we need stronger champions. But I don't think that they see exactly how rising income inequality has resulted in a very stark political reality, and it has changed our political landscape. But, you know, their heyday was in the 90s when, like, you know, kids had like Furbies and like parents, you had like soccer moms with like 2 vans and stuff like
Furbies and 2 vans.
Yeah.
That's a dream.
Do you see what they did? You see, they tried to make her sound like a ditzy, lunatic, fringy, sort of out of touch. Her point is so lucid and true. She's talking about the 90s, the Clinton era, the DLC, the Democratic Leadership Conference, the third way people, Mark Penn and his wife Jacobson. I've been to their house. They are always triangulating. Oh, we need to be more like the right. We need to be more like the right. We need to be corporate Democrats. And it was the absolute decimation of middle class people in this country was the triangulation between the corporate wet dreams of the Republicans and the kowtowing to the corporate wet dreams of Republicans by Democrats. And what she is saying is it didn't work. The middle class was cut out, carved out of American life. We are struggling. People who were firmly in the middle class and thought their kids would do a little bit better than them, that is not happening anymore. They have lost their tenuous grip on the middle class. They've fallen into the lower middle class, or worse. Their kids don't expect to be doing better than their parents. Their kids are in debt, $100,000, $200,000 by the time they graduate school. It doesn't work. It's not a good plan for the middle class. The third way is no way. The DLC is done. It's so defunct it doesn't even exist anymore. That is what she was saying. And that the leadership in the Democratic Party is not training and preparing a new generation of legislators to come up behind them. The right does it. That was her point. The right actually goes out and finds lunatic, fringy people, the Trey Gowdies and the Mark Meadows and the Paul Ryan, Ayn Randian freaks, and they help them get elected, and they vote for them for leadership positions, and they have these fundraisers where they lie behind closed doors and say, we must protect the corporate part of the party. We must protect the corporate masters. So give us money because we got your back. Remember Mitt Romney with the 47%. We don't care about them. All right? They say this behind closed doors, and you have certain Democrats that played that game, and we're done with that game is what her point was. But Laura Ingraham edited her thoughts, which were cogent, which were correct, which were pointing out a terrible mistake that the Democratic Party made in the 90s, where it lost its way, where it triangulated and started saying, we need to run more to the right. It didn't work. It's a failed experiment, to the point where the DLC doesn't exist anymore, to the point where Mark Penn is sitting in his art-filled dining room, holding court, trying to convince people to invest in this failed way with very little success. And I know this because at least 50 House Democrats have put their names on a piece of paper saying that they, if we get the majority, or when we get the majority in 18, they will not be voting for Nancy Pelosi as the Speaker of the House. They want new leadership. They want fresh leadership. They don't want corporate leadership. They want people who are going to fight for Medicare for all. They want people who put $15 an hour minimum wage front and center. They want people who are going to claw back the Wall Street largesse, who are going to say that capital gains tax doesn't deserve to be, that money that makes money shouldn't be taxed at a lesser rate than labor that makes money, meaning working people get taxed more. That we don't want $1 trillion deficit so that these Wall Street people and these corporate CEOs can buy back their stocks on our dime. This is a failed experiment. That's what she's saying. And what she's saying appeals to every single working class American, which is why Laura Ingraham carved her up to make her sound like a moron. And then played the race card after showing a brown face with a hyphenated name from the Bronx and said, oh, she lives in a loft in Queens. This girl is from the hardscrabble Bronx. She was a waitress. She worked 2 waitress jobs to pay off, and she still owes her student loans. So, yeah, you better believe she wants to do something about student loan debt, which is a burning tire, a Colombian necktie around the throats of every working class white family whose kid went to college and had to finance it. And so this is what they do. Now, everybody's focusing on the race part of what Laura Ingraham did last night, which is just typical because their entire audience, almost all the viewers, according to Nielsen, that watch this swill, listen to these lies, are white and old. They're 70-year-old white people who can't afford to pay more than for DirecTV, basic cable, and they don't get anything but Fox News. Now, they absolutely know what their audience wants. And they play to the anxiety of older, white Christian America, which is why Donald Trump decided to open his campaign with Mexicans are rapists. Decided to say that Kaiser Khan's son wasn't anybody that we should have respect for, and that Kaiser Khan was a Muslim, and his wife was prohibited from saying anything because something in that religion is really ugly, right? Because he was a protector of women while he was caught on tape saying he could grab them by the, I mean, it's just so, it's white anxiety in this country is at an all-time high among older white Americans because they see that their kids aren't doing as well as they did. They see their kids either falling down to Oxy or under debt for student loans, unable to get ahead. And so Donald Trump simply gave them a shiny object to direct their anger at. And he said, oh, it's a culture change. It's not a culture. You know what? America did have open borders. Swear to God. In the days when we had to organize farm workers because they were being so badly abused without having toilet facilities out in the fields, without having proper water and breaks, right? And the agriculture community was abusing these seasonal workers who would come to our fields and have been doing so for a very, very long time. The difference between then and now is they could go home after the picking season. Even though we abused them while they were with us, they could go home after the picking season. They could go back and forth and back and forth. This is what the people of the border counties, the border towns know. This is what El Paso knows. This is what Arizona border counties know. That they used to be able to go eat at a Mexican restaurant in Mexico, and that Mexicans could come and eat at a Mexican restaurant in Arizona freely, back and forth, and we had no problems. We suddenly got very race conscious, let's just say, when automation started stealing jobs, and the corporate Republicans and the corporate Democrats covered up this phenomenon because they knew that automation was going to steal the jobs, the good-paying jobs in the factories, and they began to blame brown people.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Well, every time the president opens his mouth, he reaffirms some of the basic premises and fundamental predicates of that white nationalist, white racist reaction. The politics of grievance that Mr. Lowry has just eloquently spoken about, the way in which the fear and intimidation of being in the face of diversity. Laura Ingraham is the mouthpiece. This is not a dog whistle. This is a megaphone speaking loudly from the hills, proclaiming the vicious politics of assault upon black and brown peoples and the refusal to acknowledge that America is broader and deeper and more profoundly inclusive than they would like.
That's the problem. It is an inclusive place. It actually is a nation of immigrants. It is a place where nobody is from, except for Native Americans, who no one likes, no one pays attention to, no one cares for them. You don't even hear any discussion about Native American issues or problems. You only hear issues about brown people now, as if black people were immigrants. No, they were chattel, and it was chattel slavery, and they were brought here. You shouldn't have brought them here if you didn't want America to actually be black and brown. And that, in spite of chattel slavery, black and brown people grab onto the American dream as soon as it's made available and do everything with it that some white people just can't seem to do. And this stokes resentment. And Fox turns it into fear. Fox turns it into fear and loathing and characterize it changing demographics. Our demographics are not changing. Okay? We have always been a country where black and brown people do the most extraordinarily hard work. And as soon as the American dream is tangible or allowed to be pursued by black and brown people, somehow they actually excel and suddenly become people of excellence. And white people, I don't know, they just sit back and feel so entitled. I'm not saying white people in general. I'm saying the Fox News viewers. They just sit back and have this sense of entitlement that, well, I'm white, and so why aren't I excellent? Why am I not excelling? Why are my kids addicted to Oxy? Why are my kids, saddled with debt? Why did I lose my house when the banks foreclosed? It's because you keep voting for the same corporate master over and over again. Free yourself. Free yourself.
Donnie, we've talked about a lot of the reaction to Laura Ingram's speech 2 nights ago. One we haven't quoted, I'll quote it right now, saying of her comments, "This is one of the most important, truthful monologues in the history of mainstream media." That was a quote from David Duke.
David Duke.
The former leader of the Ku Klux Klan. It sounds like a lot of Laura Ingraham and others are talking about the America they wish existed versus the one that does exist. And you tied it back to President Trump's Make America Great Again, which was to pull it back to a time that felt better for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, that's what autocrats, that's what dictators do. They find enough people in this country, there seem to be 35% unhappy with their lot in life. But it's, of course, it's not their fault. It's either the black man's fault or the Mexican's fault or the Jews' fault or the media's fault. And that's the way fascist dictators come to power. I have just kind of a call to action for the advertisers out there as far as Laura Ingraham's message, which to me is one of the most reprehensible things somebody gets thrown off the air, as well they should, for saying something racist using the N-word. I think this is even equally, if not more, reprehensible. You're basically saying we should be, we're becoming unwhite, and that's a problem. And I would challenge every CEO to walk through their companies this morning and look around and tap everybody on the shoulder and say, where did your grandparents come from? Where did your grandparents come from? And any advertiser that endorses that behavior and that can watch that message that Laura Ingraham puts out there and say, yep, I think my company shares those values. I think I endorse those values. I'd like to meet that CEO, because I've never met a CEO that would stand behind that. So I think the advertisers need to take a hard look in the mirror who is supporting that kind of message.
Yeah, it's a good idea. She's been the victim of boycotts before and almost lost her show before, and now she's back to type. Tucker Carlson, too. These two racist bookends that bookend the Sean Hannity I Defend Trump to the Day I Die show, they have got to be punished for appealing to fear, stoking anxiety, quoting David Duke, things that come right out of the Nazi playbook, the white supremacist crowd, the Richard Spencers of the world, the David Dukes of the world, that they are commenting on the president and Laura Ingraham and Tucker Carlson, saying, yeah, these are our people. And why do they say these are our people? Because they actually give permission for this deep, dark loathing and this anxiety and fear to flourish inside, ordinary Americans who can't figure their way out of a paper bag. The Daily Stormer, which is the neo-Nazi website, they called Laura Ingraham their greatest ally. They called Tucker Carlson their greatest ally. Tucker Carlson has impressed all these white supremacists with all his attacks on Muslims and immigrants, and Ingram's comments echo what Tucker Carlson has said on his own show. They are saying things like the Hispanic population in places like Hazleton, Pennsylvania, has grown exponentially since the year 2000, and that it's bewildering to people how they could wake up in the morning and find themselves living next to brown people. I mean, this is a sick thing. This is a sick thing. Americans, 75% of Americans who are polled, Gallup, 75%, overwhelming majority of Americans view immigration as a good thing for America, not a bad thing for America. Only this president views immigration as a bad thing for America. Only these fake news hosts, I don't even know, they're not journalists. They're not, they don't read, okay? They don't care if what they're saying is factually correct or not. They just spew this racist crap to entertain this all-white aging audience that is riddled with anxiety and fear that life has passed them by. And so now they're going to live the rest of their lives waiting for their deaths, and they just hope that you could say Merry Christmas to them. And the president actually did that. Oh, now they're all saying Merry Christmas again, which was not true. But, I mean, listen, let's put Laura Ingraham next to Ronald Reagan.
Massive demographic changes have been foisted upon the American people. And they're changes that none of us ever voted for, and most of us don't like. From Virginia to California, we see stark examples of how radically, in some ways, the country has changed. Now, much of this is related to both illegal and, in some cases, legal immigration that, of course, progressives love.
And since this is the last speech that I will give as president, I think it's fitting to leave one final thought, an observation about a country which I love. It was stated best in a letter I received not long ago. A man wrote me and said, "You can go to live in France, but you cannot become a Frenchman. You can go to live in Germany or Turkey or Japan, but you cannot become a German, a Turk, or Japanese. But anyone from any corner of the earth can come to live in America and become an American."
Now, Reagan played the race card plenty. He started his campaign off in Philadelphia, Mississippi, a place that just reeked of lynching, okay, on purpose to send a message. But in the end, on his last day, he said something decent about race issues in this country. I don't have this Reagan worship thing, you know, but that was a good thing that he said. And you will never live long enough to hear Donald Trump say anything remotely like that. You will not live long enough to hear Tucker Carlson ever say anything remotely like that. You will not hear or live long enough to hear the Daily Stormer or David Duke or Richard Spencer or Laura Ingraham say anything like that. And it's true that America is a country of immigrants. It was built on the backs of chattel slaves and immigration. People who came from all over the world who said, America is a place where I can come, I can work, I can raise my kids in freedom, and then they have this unique desire to give back. That's the beauty of America. That is what immigration does for us. If we actually ended immigration in America in the way that Donald Trump advocates for, and now, of course, he's going after legal immigration too, which is so hypocritical considering Melania's parents just became U.S. Oh, that reminds me, before we go, I found this. This is unbelievable. So everybody's saying, oh, what a hypocrite Donald Trump is because he gave so many speeches about chain migration, which is legal immigration. Chain migration means that if you're trying to get, oh, let's just say you're trying to lure from another nation a great physicist or a great scientist or somebody who writes code in a way that we've never envisioned code being written before, and it could do like amazing things, or this person understands artificial intelligence or, you know, automation or builds robots. But we want this person to come here and we want this person to give us the benefit of their intellectual property, right? We want this person to work in America and contribute to the American 21st century technological, advances. So you lure this person over, but the person says to you, well, I would come to America, but I have to bring my wife, I have to bring my kids, and I have a brother, and I'm really, really close to my brother, and unless you allow my brother to immigrate with me, or my parents to immigrate with me, or my wife to immigrate with me, or my sons and my daughters to immigrate with me, I can't even consider the job. So that's what chain migration is. Chain migration is family reunification. It's a way to lure the best people. It's a way to lure workers who will do the most horrible jobs into the country with a chance to bring their families too. That helps them assimilate. That helps them be a part of the American fabric of our society. It's a good thing. Donald Trump campaign.
End chain migration. A single immigrant can bring in virtually unlimited numbers. He may have as many as 22 to 24 people that came in with him. Aunts, uncles, cousins, grandfathers, grandmothers. He killed many people, ran them over. Chain migration. Get rid of chain migration. And how about chain migration? How about that? Chain migration. We're going to end them. Chain migration is a disaster for this country, and it's horrible.
The president has proposed ending chain migration.
Chain migration is a total disaster which threatens our security and our economy and provides a gateway for terrorism.
First Lady Melania Trump's parents are now America's newest citizens. Sponsored by the First Lady, critics are slamming her for using so-called chain migration to help get her parents' citizenship.
We have to end chain migration.
Yeah, we're not slamming her. Okay, nobody is slamming Melania for advocating for chain migration to get her parents citizenship. We welcome her parents from Slovenia. We welcome immigrants into this country. Nobody is slamming her. The president is saying he wants to end the way Melania's parents got citizenship. That's what we're saying. That's what's so bizarre. Now, just as a little parting something, the lawyer who represented Melania's family, the lawyer who used chain migration in order to get Melania's parents green cards in the first place and citizenship finally, was interviewed months and months and months ago when Donald Trump started the zero tolerance policy and separating haggard Honduran housewives from their children. They did an interview, this was so forward-thinking, on CNN with the attorney who represents Melania's family. His name is Michael Wilds. He has been the Trump family, check this out, immigration attorney for 15 years.
So here's what you said earlier today. You called the separation of children from their parents, you said it was inhumane. You said it was reminiscent of Nazi Germany, of slave trade. Very powerful words. Why do you feel that way?
First, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
First time on your show, and I'm a big fan. I'm also a big fan of my client, Mrs. Trump and her family, and I represented the president for transparency on all of his immigration affairs for about 15 years.
Why does he have them?
But I am a Jew, an observant Jew, and I'm a very proud American. And in my basement, there are photos of my mother, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, rest all their souls, with the letter J on their passport. And if you eviscerated the J, there was the name Israel by every male and Sarah by every female that was inscribed on their passport. The notion of separating people is what disturbed me. Now, don't get me wrong, Don. I'm formerly a federal prosecutor. I'm a law professor. I don't believe for a moment that any of the law enforcement ICE agents are in any way Nazis. They're not just following orders and so forth. But I do believe that the execution of our immigration laws and the broken system we have is ill-conceived, from the Muslim ban to this. And it doesn't make a difference to me who my clients are. The day I can speak up, and I'll be respectful of the attorney-client privilege and the relationships that I have on all the interviews that I do, I still need to speak up. I'm a former mayor, and I'm a very proud American, and this is not within the spirit of what our founding documents and founding fathers and mothers would envision.
Now, it's interesting that Trump has an immigration attorney, and he's got immigration issues because, you know, he brings in people to work for him and needs an immigration attorney. But this man disagrees with his client's position on chain migration, disagrees with his client on the zero tolerance policy, disagrees with his client on the race baiting that he does, because he is an observant religious Jew. And he remembers the lessons of Abraham. The lessons of Abraham are very simple. Welcome the stranger. Not just your neighbor. Your neighbor is someone who is probably a lot like you. The stranger is someone who is not a lot like you. And that is what is mentioned in the Bible over and over and over again. Welcome the stranger. Buy a stinking podcast.